Sonic found a friend and a new speedy move. Sega's new mascot provided the boost they needed for their console to take off, and on the second attempt, they designed a game better suited for him. We're back on the Genesis, also known as the Mega Drive, for Sonic the Hedgehog 2. While Sonic's first game was adored by many at the time, my experience wasn't smooth. I saw his potential and I liked the level designs. I didn't think the character fit well with the levels, however. In the sequel, Sonic's mechanics feel more refined even before using his new move, the Spin Dash. Now he can roll on the spot to build up speed, then dash away. It's hard to believe this iconic move wasn't always a feature. The new character is a fox named Miles Prower. I get it, he's as fast as the Hedgehog. Of course, we all know him by his nickname Tails, earned from having two tails. He can use his tails like a propeller for limited flight. With one player, Tails typically follows closely behind Sonic, picking up rings and occasionally taking out enemies. It's possible to play with only one character, although playing solely as Tails removes his flight. With two players, there are versus stages with a badly designed split screen, or you can play the main game together. However, Sonic is given all priority, and Tails has infinite lives. He's basically the younger sibling mode. The game begins with Emerald Hill Zone, similarly to how the previous game began with Green Hill Zone. These zones have a comparable style, but this is better with the new controls and looks sharper. Composer Nakamura was back as well, with another fun soundtrack taking advantage of the strange sounds offered by the Genesis. I don't have much to say specifically about Emerald Hill Zone, it's simply a good intro. Instead, there's a structure change to talk about, as most zones now last for only 2 acts. Previously, every zone was 3 acts long, ending in an encounter with Dr. Robotnik or Eggman, and now you see him more often. His contraptions are new and interesting, while still not too difficult to fight. Shortening the zones like this led to an increased number of locations, which was a good call. More places equals more fun, and they're all cool settings. By the second half of the game, the acts become very long, ultimately helping the sequel last longer than the original game, exactly what fans wanted. With the first zone out of the way, we can take a look at the more unique environments. Up next is Chemical Plant Zone, possibly with the most popular music in the game. It's a good mix of fast and slow segments which flow together nicely in this game. The fast segments seem to be just for fun and not challenging, but I'm glad they were added. Once again, you'll see many branching paths, and it's better to stay out of the lowest layer of the level. I noticed that this game's level design is more complex too. I found myself going left fairly often and wondering if it was the best choice, but it always led me to new parts of the level. The goal is always at the far right, so sometimes you have to trust yourself in the level to get there. It's difficult to describe why this is a good feeling. Let's just call it engaging, because it certainly kept me hooked. Aquatic Ruin Zone follows Chemical Plant, and yes, that means the dreaded drowning tune is back. In Act 2, I kept drowning because I couldn't find bubbles, but I was being rather silly by trying the same thing over and over. The water sections aren't so bad. I had a couple problems with the other parts of the level though. The enemies and traps weren't placed well, and I don't want to throw around the word unfair all the time, but it kind of is. I didn't find this zone enjoyable overall. It's not a disaster, it was just missing the flow. I liked the encounter with Robotnik though. It was a clever way of integrating the totem traps and a decent challenge. Casino Night Zone is basically what I wanted from Spring Yard Zone in the previous game. This casino party is probably the zone that inspired Sonic Spinball, a pinball Sonic game released about 1 year after Sonic the Hedgehog 2. I said I wanted Spring Yard Zone to play up to the pinball feeling with the bumpers, and wow did they ever do that in Casino Night. Adding to the bouncy bumpers, now there are several pinball flippers to boost your jumps, and the lower layers of the level contain the plungers. Apparently this is the name given to the spring that launches the ball at the beginning of the game. Is that real? This helps to make the lower parts of the level more fun, whereas a lot of zones didn't succeed with this. You can also land in a basket to play the slot machine and earn rings or lose them. And fittingly, the Robotnik battle at the end of Act 2 takes place in another big pinball table. Unfortunately, the next zone is another clunky one, and the beginning of the music sounds like a crying baby wasp. The levels in Hilltop Zone are split between hill climbing and exploring underground, and it's a good premise. Because of the lava elements underground, I can compare this to Marble Zone from Sonic 1, and at the end of the day, I think the design in Hilltop is a step up. Okay, I didn't intend that as a pun, but you'll definitely have to take a few steps up this hill. In any case, this is another zone that simply lacked a proper flow. You can build up speed with a spin dash at any point, but when I consider the naturally fast and slow sections in this zone, transitioning between them is jarring. I have never seen much praise or criticism of this zone, and it ends up being a forgettable portion right in the middle of the game. When you defeat Robotnik and clear Act 2, you've beaten roughly half of the levels. And now, it's time to talk about something I had been avoiding. Once again, Dr. Robotnik is seeking the Chaos Emeralds, and Sonic and Tails are aiming to stop him. Even if you get to the end of the game and defeat Robotnik over and over, that's not enough if you didn't get the Chaos Emeralds. They're hidden in special stages which are entered in a new way and look completely different. Like before, you need 50 rings to enter a special stage, only this time you just need to get to a checkpoint instead of the end of the stage. I found this easier to achieve, and that was appreciated. The special stages themselves are something. The game tries to present itself as 3D with Sonic and Tails running down a half-pipe. You need to collect a certain number of rings through 3 segments of the half-pipe, and meeting the threshold for the whole stage will earn you a Chaos Emerald. The first stage isn't so bad. Then they start putting spikes around blind corners. I think it's safe to say I don't like the new look special stages either. They're beyond frustrating to clear as a single player with Sonic and Tails because Tails' reactions are very delayed. I later went back to try it as solo Sonic and it felt much smoother. The ring thresholds are also lower for solo characters. This time, there's an additional reward for collecting all Chaos Emeralds. With all special stages cleared, you might think there's no point in collecting 50 rings again. You'd be wrong, although I have some opinions to share. Here in the second half of the game, I was able to activate Super Sonic for invincibility, faster acceleration and top speed, and to almost glide through the air. This lasts until your ring counter ticks down to 0, which takes a long time even if you don't collect more. Now imagine falling in a pit of spikes with no way out except you're invincible and can't die for a couple more minutes. This is a fairly specific complaint, but I believe this should not be possible. I also felt like I didn't enjoy using Super Sonic as much as I was supposed to. It was fun blazing through one of the bosses like this though. Spike pits aside, Mystic Cave Zone was enjoyable. Perhaps I didn't enjoy this music as much as other people do, but once again I thought there was a good flow between slow and fast segments. It's puzzling too. Notably, this is the first time I caught myself going in a circle, and the design is sometimes confusing, but I still liked it. Thankfully, I was used to the level design by this point, and I was able to notice quickly. Similarly, Oil Ocean Zone has its confusing moments, and it's where levels start feeling long. I've seen people online say that the game is good until this zone. I wholeheartedly disagree. It's not peak level design, in fact there are many things I would do differently, but this and the following zones are not a deal breaker. I would still say the quality is good and I enjoyed the ideas for Oil Ocean. Undoing your progress after slipping down the oil slide isn't fun, and I understand the complaints for this feature. Dare I say I actually like it though? It fits the level and the only other interaction you have with oil is if you get stuck at the lowest layer of the zone with the Oil Ocean itself. The only zone with 3 acts is Metropolis Zone. 8 zones in, and this is a weird choice because visually it doesn't look like much, and while I like the music, it's a little too repetitive to use in 3 consecutive levels. I don't think this is a bad zone though, although I really dislike the sections of rolling on a screw to slowly ascend higher. The most memorable parts are the bouncy walls, which also could have been utilized better. I was still having fun though. The way the layers loop is interesting, and I thought it was well executed. Now we're very near the end of the game and there are only 3 levels left, all named as different zones. They're all connected though. Sky Chase Zone is perhaps the last thing I expected from a Sonic game, a slow auto-scroller. It's about 2 minutes long and Sonic is riding at the front of a plane that Tails is piloting. It isn't too difficult and the music is relaxing, and overall I liked this little break. It fits in with the sequence of the final levels, but perhaps isn't suited for a Speedy Hedgehog game. The plane lands at Wing Fortress Zone and this area feels consequential. The music conveys anticipation and you're way up on a dangerous mission. Then you learn how shockingly easy it is to reach 50 rings and transform into Supersonic. My experience with this level was exactly this, and then jumping over most of the level after reaching the top layer and keeping invincibility for the boss. So, underwhelming in the end. Tails takes Sonic higher and seemingly into space, still using the little red plane. Death Egg Zone is the conclusion of the game, where instead of fighting the Eggman like you have in every zone, Sonic is greeted by a big metal version of himself. I certainly wouldn't want to touch those new Metal Hedgehog spikes. All previous encounters with Robotnik were defeated in 8 hits, and Metal Sonic is the same. Only there are no rings in the level, so you can't take damage, and this isn't even the final boss. In one attempt, without taking any damage, you need to land 8 hits on Metal Sonic and then 12 hits on the Death Egg robot. This was far and away the hardest part of the game for me, and a worthier final boss than the previous game had. I totally didn't get frustrated at all. This time I didn't see the bad ending because I got all of the Chaos Emeralds, and taking down Robotnik and the Death Egg robot ended the story. For fun, I also tried the 2-player versus mode after this by myself. You can play through the acts of Emerald Hill Zone, Casino Night Zone, and Mystic Cave Zone as a race between Sonic and Tails. The main difference to the levels are the items, which now include race-changing abilities such as swapping positions. Unfortunately, the split screen is hard to play with, leaving each character with a very squished view of the level. I didn't get the chance to play with 2 players, but I'm not sure if I would want to. There's already enough screen tear when 1 player is moving. It looks better when you compete for rings on a special stage, since no split screen is necessary. This game was more sophisticated than the first. The series started with the right idea and it continued moving in the right direction. I enjoyed most of this game and it was almost great. Almost. If I played this again, I don't think I would bother with the special stages since it would make the game more streamlined and those stages weren't fun anyway. Fortunately, it's fun to control Sonic in this game, and the addition of Tails helps with world building. The complexity of each act is very impressive too. Therefore, my final score for Sonic the Hedgehog 2 will be 7.8 out of 10. I didn't feel ready to give the Blue Hedgehog an 8 yet, but it's a good game to start with for a classic Sonic experience. The mechanics are at a good point after a shaky beginning to the series, and there's a good variety in levels. Not perfect, but still fun most of the time. Out of the Genesis games, it's also the easiest to find nowadays. On Nintendo Switch Online, only Sonic 2 is available in the Genesis section out of the console's trilogy. Sega fans could also play on a Genesis Mini, a newer compilation console with Sonic 1 and 2 included. Reviews at release were once again raving about Sega's Speedy mascot and his new fox friend. After calling Sonic 1 the uncontested best game on the Genesis, Sonic 2 earned Game of the Month status in Electronic Gaming Monthly. One reviewer gave it a perfect 10, while the average score sat at 8.75 out of 10. Even Famitsu covered this game despite their main focus on Nintendo consoles. An average score of 7.5 out of 10 is very good by their standards. Another Japanese magazine for Sega, Beep Mega Drive, gave it an average of 9 out of 10. Tell me, did you agree with the points I've made? What rating would you give Sonic the Hedgehog 2 for the Genesis, initially released in 1992? Hit the like button with one of your tails and the subscribe button with the other. Oh, is that not normal? As ever, thank you for watching, and please continue to be your own unique self.